Hello everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be doing a first look at the new Tier 8 Premium Italian medium tank, the Progetto M35 Mod 46 here. Now this just came out on the test server to where you can't actually play it. However, you can preview it, compare it against other tanks, and look at its tank model, of course. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to stack it up against other Tier 8 medium tanks and see how it actually performs stat wise. Now this is going to be coming out at some point this year, most likely in the next say 2-3 patches at the very longest, potentially even this month, who knows though. But basically it's going to be the first Italian tank in the game, and it's going to feature the new auto reloading mechanism. So if you don't know what that is, so a traditional autoloader, say it has, which this is 3 shells, say it has 3 shells, basically you either have to fire all 3 shells or you have to reload, and in that reloading process you're not able to fire anymore. It's kind of one of the downsides of autoloaders. Now the Italians, with the auto reloading mechanism that you're going to see here on the Progetto M35, they're able to actually fire shells while they're reloading. So with that, your reload time's a little bit hard to understand at first. So looking over at the right side, like I'm going to get into the comparison a little bit later, but the main kind of theme of the Italians is this mechanism. So the reload time is stated basically in that list over on the right as 8.15 seconds to 13.42 seconds. So how it works is you have 3 shells. Say you fire this first shell here and you're down to 2. If you don't fire any other shells, which there's a 2-second basically delay in between firing shells. So if you fire this first shell and you don't fire anymore, as this reloads, it's going to take 8.15 seconds, so the smallest reload time to reload. And then you're back up to 3. So if you fire 2 shells, basically what you're going to get then is a 9.59 second reload, getting your second shell back, and then after that it takes an additional, if you don't fire again, it takes an additional 8.15 seconds to get back up to your full 3 round magazine. So if you fire all 3 shells here and you have 0, it's going to take you 13.42 seconds to get that first shell, then an additional 9.59 seconds, and then finally at 8.15 to get the third one back. So that totals up to a 31.16 second reload that you can see a few spots down here. So this is the reload time I was using, and also here's the total magazine reload. So this is basically based off a 100% crew with no equipment or anything added onto it. So more or less what you have is you have flexibility. You don't have the amount of alpha like some other autoloaders do. However, you don't have the downside of not being able to fire while you're reloading. And compared to a standard tank, you have a slightly longer reload per shot, and more or less, your DPM's a little bit lower. So it's kind of a, you don't have the highs and lows of an autoloader, but you're kind of still gimped in a way as far as your reload's a little bit longer. But if you need to dump, say, all 3 shots all at once, you're going to be able to, say, finish off a lower HP tank that doesn't have an autoloader easier than they can finish you off, given that you have 3 shots instead of they'll get only like 1, maybe 2 off. So looking at the crew here, there's 4 crew members. As far as I know, the tier 8 through 10 Italian tanks have the same setup with 4 crew members. The description here for the Progetto M35 Mod 6, still in Russian. However, based off of Wargaming's preview video, this is basically a few different tanks as far as like the gun, the turret, and also the hull, basically components compiled together because they used all of the actual Italian designs and produced tanks, or as far as blueprinted tanks, up in the tech tree. So this is essentially a tank that potentially could have saw the light of day if they actually designed it. But as far as this being a real tank, as far as I know, you know, it didn't actually say be created, given that they used them all for the tech tree. But anyway, getting into the comparison here, I'm going to compare it against some tier 8 mediums here. So with this, you know, the Progetto M36 here, and then we have the T69, Prima Victoria, Centurion 1, Lorraine 40T, Indian Panzer, and STA1. I tried to pick tanks that either had autoloaders, or as far as like the size and, you know, as far as play style, they're going to play somewhat similar. Now, these are all 100% cruise, no camouflage added to the tanks. Outside of the Prima Victoria, you can't take it off. And also, you know, no equipment, none of that, you know, as far as premium consumables, stuff like that. So more or less 240 damage per shot, in line with every other tier 8 medium here, except where the Lorraine 40T has slightly higher at 300. But 240, you know, basically average for a tier 8 medium, not high, not low. Nothing really to see here outside of, you know, you have the 3 shells in the magazine, so you'll be able to basically dump more damage if you need to against, say, like a Prima Victoria and Centurion 1, whereas they only have that 1 shot. Penetration at 212, a little bit, you know, in the middle as far as tier 8 mediums go. So it's not as bad as the T69, but not many things are as bad as the T69. But not as high as, say, a Prima Victoria. You know, it has 14 millimeters less pen. Centurion 1 beats it out. Even the STA1 beats out a little bit, but it's in line with the Indian Panzer, which given that they're both pretty accurate tanks, you know, you don't have too much of a problem actually being able to penetrate things with 212 millimeters of pen. Now, looking at the premium round here, 259 millimeters of pen, not the best at tier 8, but definitely, you know, it's not the best, or it's not the worst. So 258 here. Looking at the T69, you know, it's better than the T69, especially because it's an APCR premium round. T69 is heat here. However, when you look at the Prima Victoria, you know, more or less the same here. 258 millimeters pen here, and, you know, 259. So it's only 1 millimeter difference. The Centurion 1 premium round, 258 again, so it's a little bit better there. Lorraine 40T, it's a little bit lower than a Lorraine 40T. Indian Panzer, same thing, it's the 259. So the premium shell, it's not towards the top of tier 8 mediums, but it definitely is fairly good for a premium round, especially when you combine the accuracy in there. So the rate of fire, you can't really compare it too much against the other tanks, given that it has this auto reloading mechanism. It doesn't actually list its true rate of fire. The reload time, though, since we know it takes 8.15 seconds to reload that first round, you kind of can compare it against non-auto loading tanks, to where, as you can see, if you're just using it to fire this 1 shell down and then let it reload to 3 and then fire again, so not using it like an autoloader, the Prima Victoria almost has a 1 second better reload than it, same as the Centurion 1. Indian Panzer, you know, has a much better reload over, it's basically 1.25 seconds, and then the STA 1 here, you know, basically the same there, as far as basically you're losing 1 shot per minute, more or less, if you're using it without the autoloader or auto reloading mechanism. So if you're just firing 1 shot at a time, you definitely take a pretty big hit compared to a standard non-auto loading tank, and then compared to the autoloaders here, with 4 shots in both the T69 and Lorraine 40T. Lorraine 40T already having a lot more alpha damage. You're going to be basically lacking that direct punch. So more or less, it's a nice feature, but it does have its downsides, where you don't have, you know, again, the highs and the lows, but you're just kind of in the middle somewhere, kind of lost in the middle, and you kind of have to take advantage of this system in the right moments to make the most out of it. Turret traverse, though, you know, basically in line with other tier 8 mediums. However, the STA1 is better than it by a pretty good margin. but it's better than most tier 8 mediums by a pretty good margin. Gun depression to -8, not bad. You can actually hold down on this. Your turret armor is not good, so most things can penetrate you. Tier 6s might have some trouble, maybe some low pen tier 7s, but basically anything tier 7 that's elite up all the way to tier 10 is just going to shred your turret unless they get a really unlucky shot, like say on the angled mantlet, or kind of ricochet off or something. Basically the reload here for the autoloaders, kind of went over that already. So the aiming time of a little over 2 seconds, best out of these tier 8 mediums. It's going to aim in really fast, and with the .32 accuracy, you're tied best with the Prima Victoria and Centurion 1 for the best accuracy out of these tier 8 mediums. So more or less the downside of this tank comes with the DPM. So out of all the tanks here, the only tank with less DPM is the Lorraine 40T. So more or less, if you're using the autoloader mechanism, your DPM is a little bit higher than say the Lorraine 40T, but a little bit lower than the T69. So there's a lot of positive and negatives to where a standard tank with no autoloader, as you can see, like the Prima Victoria, Centurion 1, Indian Panzer, STA1, they're all out going to DPM you. Whereas the autoloaders are going to alpha you as far as dumping the magazine. So again, it's difficult to say how this tank's going to work. However, stat-wise, the gun, since that's the main feature of this tank, you have really good penetration, really good accuracy, the aiming time's great, gun depression's good, to where the only real question is the DPM and whether or not having a blend of a single shotgun and a blend of an autoloader is actually going to be worthwhile. So survivability here, 1400 HP, higher than the Lorraine, higher than the T69, and the Indian Panzer, a little bit lower than the Prima Victoria and STA1. So basically average HP for tier 8 medium. As far as the armor goes, it doesn't really have much. Just basing it off of like little tidbits I've seen, and also looking at the models, I'm relating it to basically the Indian Panzer. The hull, it's a little bit weaker than that. However, I would compare this to the TVP VTU basically, as far as the hull armor, to where it's not really going to stop anything unless somebody like shoots your tracks with heat or shoots you at a really weird angle. The turret armor is kind of the same thing, to where I would compare it to the Indian Panzer directly, because you're going to get bounces if people basically shoot you and it hits like a highly angled spot or parts on the mantlet and stuff. But more or less, as far as armor goes, it doesn't stack up against, say, even a Centurion 1, T69, Prima Victoria. They're all going to blow it out of the water, to where like the STA1 with its lack of armor, it's more like that, where you're not going to bounce shots unless you kind of get lucky. Say if you're hold down and someone like bounces off of your roof or something, and like it doesn't overmatch you or whatever. Now moving on to mobility here. So it weighs 35 tons, doesn't really paint too much of a picture. Neither does the engine, but the specific power here. So Lorraine 40T, higher specific power. Lorraine 40T is really fast for a tier 8 medium. That's basically second in line to the Lorraine 40T. As far as this comparison go, it has a 18.63 specific power before equipment and other things are factored in, to where it's going to be really fast. Like the Prima Victoria is fairly fast as well, to where this has a higher specific power. And once you get to the top speed here of 55, the only thing that's higher than it again is the Lorraine 40T. So this is going to be a really fast tank. Its accuracy moving around, given the aiming time, overall accuracy, and kind of looking at some soft stats, the on the move accuracy doesn't look like it's going to cripple this tank, to where you're basically really mobile, moving around fast, and it's like, I really wish that, going back to like the TVP VTU, I didn't include it in this comparison because honestly that tank, it stinks. I almost wish, the TVP VTU kind of had like an autoloader on it, because this tank reminds me a lot of the Skoda T50 at tier 9. You know, slightly different because that's a higher tier, but it reminds me of that as far as the armor goes on the hull and the turret, and the auto reloading gun. Granted, it's different with only 3 shots on it, and it doesn't have the full auto loader magazine downfalls of having to reload the whole thing. It reminds me of that tank a lot, with the mobility, the gun, and the armor. Moving on here, traverse speed, nothing hidden there that's going to screw you over. Camouflage though, you know, it's not excellent. You know, 11.97 as far as the base value. While stationary, while moving, you know, 9, to where there's tanks that are better, tanks that are worse than it. You know, as a tier 8 medium, it's not high enough to really protect you from too much, but more or less, you know, camouflage, it's not like it's, say, 5 or something and it's terrible. And it's not like it's, say, best in class either. So it's just average. The view range, however, you know, 390, it's basically middle of the road again, to where stuff like the T69, Prima Victoria are better than it. However, it does have more view range than the Lorraine 40T, Indian Panzer. So it has a little bit going for it, but it's not best in class. Overall though, you know, getting back to the preview here, what do I think, or how do I think that this tank is gonna perform? The Progetto M35, I think it's gonna be a really hard tank to play, but I don't think it's gonna be bad. It's definitely gonna be different with the auto reloading mechanism, to where since it doesn't have, you know, clearly defined as far as the ups and downs of it, and you kind of make the most of it. It's flexible to where if you need all 3 shots, you should take it. But if you find yourself in a situation where instead you should be, say, treating it like a single shotgun and keeping your DPM a little bit higher, since you're only reloading with 8.15 seconds between shots, it's going to be hard basically for a lot of players to basically realize when you should be doing that, or when you should be shooting like 2 shots or shooting all 3 shots. So it's definitely going to be a really difficult tank to master. However, even given the low DPM on it, I think that flexibility will be good in most matches. However, it might come back to bite you in 1v1 fights early on in battles, kind of like other auto reloaders, where if you don't kill someone, say with your entire clip, then you're going to be at a disadvantage and most likely you're going to die. So it's not going to be great early on in battles, say brawling and stuff. However, it's going to get really deadly, say mid-game or later on in battles, because unlike other auto loaders where, say in Lorraine 40T, late in game you rush out, you clip, say, 1 tank and you fire 1 shot into the second tank, you're then out for, you know, over 30 seconds and you're not able to fire at all again, even if that last tank, say, has 200 HP left and you're not able to, say, ram him and kill him. This tank, however, you're going to be able to run out, say, kill that first tank, and then that second tank that normally would basically just start shooting at you, you can't retaliate, you're going to be able to shoot him once you get your first shot back in 8.15 seconds. So slightly lower DPM than another, say if you're playing like the Prima Victoria or STA1. However, it doesn't have that downside of a typical auto reloader, to where it's going to be very interesting. I think it's more of like a mid-game to late-game tank, to where while it might have some downsides, mainly the DPM of this tank, it gets really deadly later on because you have a lot of options available to you. However, early on or on city maps and stuff, you might be a little bit more restricted. But anyway, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this little preview and kind of review of the Progetto M35 Mod 46 here. You know, it's going to be coming out some point soon, possibly even this month in March, since there's a new premium tank coming out, but nobody knows except for Wargaming. So anyway, thanks again for watching this video. See you around, and if you bought this tank, you know, and you're watching this, hopefully you enjoy it. So have a good one. See ya.